Over 3,500 bespoke parts, a 4.4 litre flat six engine made out of solid billet, a one-piece 3D designed stainless steel exhaust system, a suspension system that was inspired by Formula One. Now we've met the guy who came up with the idea. Now it's time to meet the man who was challenged with the task of building it, Greg Bailey. This is a really cool factory. Cool part of town, right next to the railway line at Cremorne. Is there a reason for building them so close to the city?
Absolutely. I think everything we're doing is different, and even the location that we're building our cars has to be in a cool, funky part of town. And our customers and our fan base all want to have us close to the city, and that's part of the coolness. You would never expect people designing and building bespoke cars in this neck of the woods. So it's all part of our DNA essentially as a company.
Can you take us through the processes, I guess, of building the ZB?
Absolutely. Essentially, we start with really good donor cars. That's the main thing. So we're building our resto mods are based off cars from the 80s. We buy running, driving condition cars from all over the world. They can be left-hand or right-hand drive cars. We prefer using cars from Australia originally, and from there we strip the cars. And it's a really massive process where we're only using about 15% of the original components. Most of the structural bodywork is all still carried over, but all the external surfaces are carbon fiber, so the car gets rebodied essentially. And then obviously the new sheet metal chassis gets replaced, and that's our own sheet metal pressing designs, as you might be aware, in terms of the structural parts. And with that, we are able to increase the chassis strength. And from there, then it's all sort of the fun parts that the customer gets to choose the colors and the finish in terms of leathers and materials, and then all the rest of the fit out, which is electrics, brakes, suspension, obviously engine, all piping. There's a lot of piping in these cars, and then there's the commissioning and testing at the end. So in a nutshell, it's kind of all of that process is in about 18 months worth of work per car.
There's a room full of 3D printers. What's the reasoning for that?
Well, we do all our own design in-house and our own prototyping, and almost, as I say, if 85% of the parts here are our own design. So at some stage or another, every single part was made as a 3D printed prototype. So from a wheel to an engine block to obviously the gauges and all the interior parts. In fact, this green car that's sitting behind you, that still has 100% 3D printed interior. So the entire interior was printed on all those printers in there.
With resto mods, lots of people try to restore what's already there. 15% you're retaining. Why would you decide to scrap a perfectly good car and build the rest yourself?
Well, I've restored a couple of Porsches in my day, and one of them was my car that I still own for 14 years now. It's a 1967 911S, and I did a full nut and bolt restoration on that car. And at the end of the day, when the car was finished and I was driving it around and using it, it quickly dawned on me that the car was only as good as the day it was built in the factory in 1967. And since then, we know we've got almost 60 years of engineering know-how and improvements in technology. There's no real point in being constrained by all those original parts in the car. And if you don't get rid of those, you essentially just building a car that was as good as it was in 1967. So our recipe is, well, you've got to go so extreme for the engineering and the car as a whole to be drastically improved, and that's what we've done.
Is that why you decided to do your own 4.4 litre motor?
It's one of the reasons, yes, absolutely. We are chasing reliability is a key for us. You know, we want to be building a solid reputation with our customers, and peace of mind is a big thing. You know, if it's a car that's my own, I really want to ensure that every part is designed well and it's free from fatigue, and it's good to go from high revs and high performance. And the only way I could really make that happen for us was if we designed every part ourselves and made everything new. As soon as you carry over old parts from an engine, there's always question marks of has it passed its fatigue life potentially. And at the same time, we've got this balance of how big of an engine can we go. 4.4 was about the largest we could fit within this engine bay of the classic 911 chassis. So that's kind of the compromise we reached.
Can we talk about a couple of specifics of the car? F1 style suspension. Why did you decide to do that?
Well, as I'm sure a lot of people know, that these 911s of this era were kind of nicknamed the Widowmaker. And one of the big reasons for that was not the extreme power, or not the fact that they had turbo lag for the 930 turbos, or not the fact that the engine was a rear engine hanging over the rear axle. It was in fact the reason for the suspension geometry, that the way the rear suspension wheels move up and down under bump. And essentially there's something called bump, toe out over bump. And so essentially that made the car become sort of self-steering at the rear. So the more you'd steer the car into the corner, the more the rear would want to self-steer into this oversteer situation. And so the only real solution for that was to re-engineer the entire suspension system, which is what we've done. And as part of the packaging, there was literally no space in the outboards of the chassis for the shock absorber and spring, which is the conventional location for it, because of our constraints of the original chassis members. So the logical solution to me was to build inboard shockers with the rockers, and then we've got these titanium push rods which link up to the lower control arms. And essentially the benefits there are twofold. With going through a rocker, we can basically control the wheel loads much better as well. And as I say, there's the packaging of fitting all this into the constraints of the classic chassis.
When we look at a brand new Porsche and put that next to a ZB, considerably larger. Obviously your challenge has been space to get modern technology into a car like this.
Absolutely. Every part of this project has been fighting space, because people have these expectations, which I have those expectations myself, of what a performance sports car should be. And so we've been trying to fit all this technology into it, and you just literally run out of room in terms of the space of the body. And I can see why Porsche over the years have had to increase the size of these cars, because emissions have got tighter as time has gone on, from sound emissions and even obviously exhaust gas emissions. And there's no substitute for space or volume to solve those problems. And so everything we've done has been a challenge from space. And I think current 911s have become a little bit too big, and they've lost some of that sexiness of the classic small sports car. And so to me, this is well worth fighting those constraints to fit it and compromises to fit everything into the classic bodies.
You mentioned the exhaust system. 3D printed, stainless steel, first in the world apparently. But why hasn't anyone else done it?
Well, there are companies out there doing sections of exhausts. I know there's a couple of guys who do exhaust tips as an example, which is quite common. But the entire exhaust system, it becomes a challenge from the size of the 3D printing machines to actually print all these components. And so we've had to really think long and hard about how to print these parts and then still fabricate them together to create the whole exhaust system. And so the technology is still really early on in terms of 3D printing from size. But the other side of it is the extreme cost of the entire exhaust system if it's 3D printed. And so we're in a fortunate situation where our budget targets allow us to go with 3D printing. But at the end of the day, it was the natural solution for us to be able to package the exhaust system as efficiently as possible under the classic 911.
Singer now going for around about $5 million a car around the world. They got into bed with Williams and decided to put the Williams motors in theirs. You decided to build your own here in this little factory in Cremorne, Victoria. Why? And has it been worth it?
It's absolutely been worth it. But the why has been more than just building an engine. It's also building a business. We could have found a partner like a Williams or a Cosworth potentially to create these engines for us. But then us as a company, what are we creating ourselves? Where's our DNA? What do we bring to the table that's different to what anyone else out there is doing? And at the same time, we feel that these sort of projects, there's just not enough of them happening in Australia. So we really wanted to create something within Australia itself, and something we can be proud of. Outsourcing something to the UK or the US would have felt like just sort of copping out or taking a shortcut. So we gave ourselves a lot of headaches as a result of this decision. But now that we've developed this, the world's our oyster. I think our next sort of engine projects in future are really exciting, and we've developed all this IP and done a lot of valuable research, which I feel there are very few companies in Australia that could compete with us now.
I got a funny feeling this car's going to be constantly developed. Is that the case?
I think I've got to pull myself away and realize that I'm not going to be able to create the Mona Lisa at my first attempt. And so obviously every car that we build, I've got this sort of motto that we're only as good as the last car we've built. So yes, absolutely, we're going to be improving every single one as we go with time. And the world's an oyster. Porsche have been in business for how many years now, and every model that they create is better than the last one, which was better than the one before that. And so I think we're going to head down that road as well.
You must be thrilled when a lot of people, when they comment about the car.
I'm a bit of a perfectionist at heart, and so I'm always looking forward and not probably taking enough of these compliments on board right now, and just always thinking ahead. So it's nice to know that people appreciate the cars and they're liking what they see, and starting to generate a little bit of a following in what we're doing is exceptionally rewarding.